let's talk about some of the more famous sightings. I'm sure that people ask you about them all the time, and you can go online and look at pictures. Modern, of course, going back to the 30s with the surgeon's photograph. I kind of want to delve into some of those stories right now that you know of.
Sure. Well, I suppose since that spark back in the 1930s, there have been photos that people haven't been able to explain. And also there have been hoax photos. Let's be very honest about that.
Right.
People have staged photographs. Our exhibition talks about someone finding footprints in the mud at the side of Loch Ness. And if you come to the show here, you can find out exactly what caused those footprints, but it wasn't the Loch Ness Monster on that particular occasion. So yeah, there's some pretty iconic stuff, as you've already said there, the surgeon's photo. But then once they started delving into the depths of Loch Ness, they've got all these underwater photos of murky things. Like one's been proven to be like a tree stump that's coming out of the silt, but it has that silhouette and shape that, the plesiosaurus shape with the long neck sticking out there. So it is getting quite difficult to distinguish between what's a real photo and what's a fake photo, and what's a mistaken identity. But yeah, there's quite a lot out there. And, you just need to Google some of them and you can see just how good some of these fakes actually are.
Well, the one you talk about is the famous image of Loch Ness that you'll see, on In Search Of, or the cover of books or magazines. And it's the famous black and white picture with the neck of Nessie coming out. And then, of course, we've referred to it as the surgeon's photograph, because a surgeon, a doctor, apparently took that. And that's now been proven to be a hoax, correct, Paul?
Yeah, that's right. Unfortunately, it's probably it's the most famous hoax photo I think that I know of. I think it sort of trumps some Area 51 photos that I've seen, things like that. But yeah, I mean, that's been a fake. But actually, it was revealed a fake as a deathbed confession. So it managed to maintain its false identity right the way through till someone who knew better confessed it on a deathbed. So a really fascinating story behind that one.
Do we ever know why that was ever done, just to get some attention? Or
if you delve a little bit into the ancestry of that family that hoaxed that photo, you'll come across a character somewhere along the line called Marmaduke Wetherall, and he was very much he was a game hunter. So he had his safari hat on and his safari shirts, and he's been photographed with a monkey on his shoulder. So he's quite a character, and we talk a lot about him and his involvement in the project. And he was brought up here to capture the Loch Ness Monster, and that photo in a roundabout way is connected to his line.
Have you met people that have stories of seeing the monster?
Every day. I mean, there's a guy that lives on the beach at the north side of Loch Ness, Steve. He's an independent Nessie hunter. He lives in a cabin. His life has been dedicated pretty much to finding the Loch Ness Monster, and he'll tell you stories about, in his first year, him seeing something in the water going against the flow, causing splashes in water wakes. You'll speak to Steve. You'll speak to other people in the area, and these are genuine. These are
right.
I've spoken to lawyers, accountants, policemen, forestry workers, water bailiffs, boat skippers, all claiming that they've seen something in the water, claiming that they can't explain what they've seen. And they don't all come and say, I've just seen a big green head sticking out and that. It's not that. It's a lot more subtle than that. But they are convinced that they've seen something that is not easily explainable, is probably how I would best phrase it.
Mm-hmm. No, and another thing is interesting too, when we were there, just talking about the water in the loch and how murky it is in this lake. Explains a little bit of that, about how hard it is to actually try and put, I don't know, sonar or cameras deep down into the water because of how murky it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, its volume is 23 miles in length. So it's this huge body of water. It's surrounded by moorland. So the water around here is quite peaty. So it's got that brown sort of tea color to it. So the moment you start going down to any depth, the light disappears really, really quickly. And again, when you speak to some of the scientists that have conducted experiments, one of the early experiments they did was that rather than look down into the depth, they anchored cameras on the bottom shining up at the silhouette of the surface. So you were using the light of the sun to capture anything that was traveling over your head. So that allowed you to see a little bit more, but pretty much you only have to go down a few meters, a few feet, and you're pretty much in total darkness down there. It's it's pretty spooky in that sense.
And of course, that also makes it very hard to see anything down there. Very dark, and like you mentioned, there's so much sediment and peat, moss.
Yeah.
That, just to put your hand under the water, kind of.
Yeah. By the time you stuck your whole arm in, you're standing there waist or chest deep. You won't see your feet. It's that sort of the light just disappears straight away as you start to go down there. So anything that you want to see with the human eye, you have to chuck a ton of light down there, and then you're only really seeing just what's right in front of your face. So it's a really difficult task trying to figure out what could be lurking down there.
How deep is the loch?
It's 227 meters deep. So to visualize that, did you see Edinburgh Castle on your travels when you were over here?
Yeah.
So basically, Edinburgh Castle sits on a volcanic hill, and that would disappear twice in the depths of Loch Ness. So that's a huge chasm of water. In fact, the entire world's population would fit inside Loch Ness. So that's
really?
sort of volume of water we're talking about. Yeah, it's huge, because obviously it's 23 miles long. It's not that wide. You can see the other side of it quite easily, but it's just that depth it drops down to there.
And just for those of you who aren't on the metric system, 227 meters is about 750 feet. So think about that, 23 miles long and 750 feet deep. And you say the entire world's population could fit into the area.
Yeah.